Okay, and you are live on YouTube.
All right, live on YouTube. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, whoever's here, which I can't see other than the people that are on the screen. My name is Terry Lomax. I'm the chair of the Maritime Advisory Board, and this is our regular monthly meeting, the third Tuesday of the month. We have present Peter Trogdon, member, Debbie Goslin, member, Scott Allen, member, who else did I see? Rick Frankie, member. We also have, thank you tonight, Alderman Tierney. We have Beth Bellis, Harbor Master. We have Hope Stewart from the city. We have some guests, Jake Iverson. We have Jennifer Kay. We have Donna Morrow from DNR, not DNR, DNR?
It's DNR.
Yes, DNR, sorry. Jennifer Kay is Schooner Woodwind. And I think I have covered everybody and Eric from City of Annapolis TV. So with that, we will get started. Actually, Bill Woodward just joined us. And Frida Wildy, who is another member, has indicated that she would probably join us a little bit late. She is volunteering with the Naval Academy and is likely to just be coming off the water. Lucky her. So with that, Alderman Tierney is here, and out of deference to her schedule, I think I saw, there we go. Out of deference to her schedule, I said I would take up a subject first that she had brought up, and I think maybe Beth can enlighten us, and it kind of goes along. We don't have Ashley, but it kind of goes along with Ashley's ongoing reports regarding the Burtis house. So as I understand it, the Burtis house transfer is fast approaching, which includes both the house and the city dock, which then brings up the issue of what to do with the city dock. And I will provide a little bit of background, which you all may or may not recall, is that the City Dock Action Committee, which has adopted an overall plan for the city dock, has the city dock has the Burtis dock as an integral part of the overall city dock plan, mainly because for a couple of reasons. One is there's one of the, I think, two unencumbered, and Beth, you can correct me if I'm wrong, one of the two unencumbered portions of city dock, which is now available to work with in conjunction with the National Park Service, with the city for a variety of not only programs, but variety of activities. And there's been recommendations of everything from making it available for charter fishing boats, other types of activities. And I think Parks and Recs has been involved in some of the activities on City Dock already. Maybe Beth, you can enlighten us a little bit more of what Parks and Recs has been doing, and whether or not, from a management perspective, that a proposal for them to manage it overall, it makes sense.
Of course. So I had a meeting with the city manager and chief of staff and Archie Trader yesterday. And I'm not entirely sure I understand completely what the mayor's office's vision is, but I can tell you that in general, the thought is that I will book and manage the docks in the same way that I book and manage the rest of City Dock, but that in some sense, the sailing center will facilitate sailing trips. And so what I have asked is that I can have a one-on-one meeting with the sailing center with Archie Trader present, so that we can actually nail down the size of the ships and the intended visits, because we already have more than 20 days that we're fully booked and turning boats away. So my intention is to make sure that the docks don't sit empty in the way that they have sat empty in the past. And so I'm sure that the council is very interested in making sure we continue our history and our education and all of our sailing programs to be sure that all people are able to get to the water and experience sailing, but also that when they are empty, we could have a parasailer or a small craft group or a charter fishing boat. And so that's my vision. I think that the city manager shares my vision. I know that my supervisor shares my vision. The challenge is getting the existing bookings nailed down and not to change and not to have bookings that were not booked and not to have double bookings, so that the cooperation is what we look forward to having happen next.
So let me ask you this. So if what I'm hearing is that think about it, the 800 number for the Holiday Inn. You're the 800 number for would be the 800 number for the Holiday Inn, and basically rooms are booked through you.
Yes. So it's really important that the city get everyone's insurance for liability reasons. And it's really important that we actually speak to the captains. So in the past, the sailing center has tried to book those on their own, and I've been left out of the loop. So what has happened is maybe we had bad weather, or maybe we had a small change, and then the boats would show up 2 days earlier. They wouldn't show up whatsoever. And then the docks either sat empty or they were double booked. So we need to make sure that our staff has the captain's cell phone number. We need to make sure that if Sailing Center is going to facilitate these educational groups, that's great. But I need to make sure I have the insurance on file. I need to make sure if Captain Joe says he's coming at 2 p.m. on Saturday, he can call me and say, you know what, there's 4-foot seas. We're going to come at 6 a.m. on Saturday. Can you accommodate that? So we just need to nail down the particulars.
Is there anything different with that than what you do with the rest of the charter docks?
No, that would be managed exactly the same way the charter dock has been managed in the past.
Okay. Alderman Tierney, you asked it, you brought it to my attention that we were moving in the direction of the fact that the dock is going to be available. We're coming into the summer. You want anything you want to share with us?
Well, yeah, this was triggered by an email that was sent to me by Lee Tani discussing the links coming for about a month, but then in the same email, he was saying that he was going to forward the programming of the sailing center. And that's, where I talked to Beth to see if she was aware of these dates for the sailing center and all of that. I think what I knew about the meeting with Beth and the city manager. I have not discussed this. The mayor knows how I feel. I think what I'm hearing right now from Beth is that the sailing center is not leaving. Is that correct, Beth? I mean, they will have a presence. They have a sign. It says Annapolis Sailing Center.
I'm not sure I can really
Oh,
say
I'm sure it's
exactly.
not.
I'm not sure it'd be fair for me to say exactly how the mayor's office feels about what role the sailing center is going to have moving forward. I know that they support us making revenue when the historical ships are not there. I know that they understand that the educational and sailing programs are important and they want to support that and continue that. I don't know exactly how this marriage of interest is going to come to fruition. But I'm hopeful. I am hopeful, although it hasn't gone well in the past, if I'm being honest, it has not gone well, but I'm going to put my best foot forward and I really hope it's going to go well in the future.
Yep. Well, just a reality check. When he says May, the month of May, the dates are May 12th, May 13th, May 15th, May 18th, May 20th, May 22nd, May 25th, May 27th, May 29th. So I mean, this just tells me that they will have a presence on that dock, and my position is in the interest of the city's budget. You know, we are struggling, not to have any sort of debt and looking for opportunities for revenue. We've waited years for this long dock, for years. And it's just unfortunate that there's this entity that has gotten the support, I think, of even of some of my colleagues, and that I know I feel strongly that it's something that we could do between the harbor master and the Parks and Recs and manage the dock. I think Gavin is probably, trying to be, accommodate everyone, and that's his personality, and I'm sure that's how they are going to try to juggle this. But I really wanted to have your opinion on the use of this dock and what you felt about, having, like any other city, the harbor master having control of it.
To be honest, I don't understand what another entity could bring to this dock that I could not bring. I don't think there's anything magical about connecting with captains. And I am certain that Archie Trader's passion and gift is that he connects with disadvantaged or underprivileged groups. I also think that he connects well with all groups. So I am not certain I understand entirely what the vision is from the mayor's office. But I am pleased that they are allowing our office to book the trips. My concern is that hasn't gone well in the past. And I hope that it will go better in the future.
Let me throw this open to the members of the board for any questions they may have. I've sort of set the stage of this, and thank you, Alderman Tierney, for that background. So anybody want to chime in on this as to, or raise your, I guess there's a hand raise or something, but yes, Duncan, Mr. Hood is with us.
I apologize for coming a little late. Are we speaking about having the possibility of having the harbor master's office run programming like they're trying to do at the sailing center?
So what the mayor's office, what their vision is now at the mayor's office is that I would book and manage the dock, but that Mr. Tawney would facilitate the bookings at the dock. And so what they have said is, because the long dock is not in Title 15 at the moment, it would be okay, I think, from a legal standpoint, and Ashley can jump in if I'm wrong, for us to just have some policy until such time the council can weigh in. So for example, if I want to bring stem sailing, or if I want to bring the links in, we can book them in at a 0 fee, and they can come in and do what they have done in the past at the sailing center. On the alternative, when the docks are empty, I would book those docks for a super yacht or a recreational boat or 17 sailboats on Blue Angels weekend, and they would pay the normal fee that's already in the fee schedule. And because the long dock was never thought of when the fee schedule was born, I think that the legal department has says we may do that for a short period of time. We may say that here's what we're doing with 501c3s, or however we may decide that policy, whatever that looks like. That's what we're going to say. So I'm assuming I'm going to get together with Mr. Tawney and Archie Trader, and we're going to book in the programs that were booked in the past. And when those programs are not happening, I already have at least 20 days that I'm turning people away, and I already have waiting lists. I can call up those boats and say, congratulations, Mr. Smith. I know you wanted to come for Blue Angels weekend with your grandchildren. We have room for you. And so I will book those spaces. And just so the group knows, typically we make more than $200 per linear foot. So we're looking at probably $70,000 plus if we were to make a reasonable amount of income on that space. So whenever these historic educational outreach programs are not there, then we would book in these other boats. I think that's the vision, and that's what we're looking to do.
So,
Sounds like it makes a lot of sense. And I just wondered, so Lee will be presenting the programming, whereas you will be retaining the management of the dock. Is that right?
That's what I'm understanding.
Okay.
But does Lee have the first right of refusal to the dock?
What I was told is there will be a reasonable amount of time in the very near future that we'll book everything. And then we will open it to recreational transient and whomever else fits the bill, because it's not grant encumbered. So reasonably any commercial boat could come. So I haven't heard back. This meeting was only yesterday. So I did send an email today saying, hey, let's try, the season is upon us, so let's try to hurry up and get together and figure out, let's nail down what size are these boats and when are these programs likely to happen, so that we may book whomever else would like to come. So I don't know. I guess you're right, Debbie. I guess it is first right of refusal, but I don't have a specific directive about that.
And Beth, what is happening with the what they used to call the state docks in front of the sailing center?
So that's the dock we're talking about right now.
Oh, when you talk about the long dock, you're not talking about the park dock. You're talking about that dock. Okay, great. Thanks.
So which one are you talking about as the work dock?
I'm talking about the park dock, the one around Campbell Park,
Okay,
all that dockage.
so the charter
right.
dock is the one at the end of Susan Campbell.
Yeah,
It's a different conversation, and the north face is the one at the side of Susan Campbell, and that is for normal recreational transient boats.
got it. Okay, thank you.
I can just make a comment. I think it's great, Beth, and I think it can be a win-win situation. Just work collaboratively on it, as you say, and meet and plan far ahead. I think that's the key of the whole thing. So the objective, obviously, is that the dock is put to good use for most of the time that it's there. And I think that's an excellent idea. Just have to work together and see what the mayor wants to accomplish in the long run. So that's good. And a bit of information that I just stumbled onto. And Ellie, you might know about this, but the Ross Arnett is, I don't know if he's determined, but he's hopeful that there can be funds raised or a grant or something to take away the burden of the debt, so that all of the city dock can have a more open, flexible arrangement that Beth can use. So that's just something in his eyes to do. Just get rid of the I don't know what you call it, the debt or the encumbrance. So that
The
it doesn't
DNR
have to.
encumbrance, or I don't know what he's.
I think it's the
talking-
federal, the financing loan. Beth, what do you call that?
So the grant encumbrance is because the docks were rebuilt with the waterway
Right.
improvement grant.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lovely goal. But
I
when we
don't know
start,
anything about it, but it's a goal, and Ross thinks that it would be much better for the city dock if they can get rid of the encumbrance, because it just takes a lot of these hassles off of Beth
Speaking of
and
the devil,
boats to use when.
But everybody hold on just a second. Eric, Mr. Tomasini is apparently,
Yes, he got a hand raised that he's looking to talk, I think.
if you would let
Ross is on, so he can explain it.
let him in.
Frida's had her hand up.
Ross, Frida had her hand up before you came in.
Of
Can
course.
I let Frida go ahead and speak?
Thank you, and I apologize for being late, but I know Harbor Master Bellis, in the past, you've mentioned several occasions where there've been some communication issues. And I wondered if have y'all managed to resolve going forward what's going to be who's going to do the scheduling and be the point of contact? Is that going to be Archie Trader or you, or how's that going to function when they're, because sailors, the last minute, there's always communication issues. Thank you.
so what I am told is that I will be the person that manages and books the dock. However, the last 2 meetings that were scheduled with Mr. Tony, he did cancel both meetings, and then he did schedule his own meetings without me. So I am optimistic, but so far we have not been able to collaborate, and I'm not sure how that's going to work moving forward.
Ross, I think you were about to say something.
Yeah, so I do have some information on that. I just spoke with City Manager Gerald this afternoon, and Lee is going to be meeting with the city officials, including you, Harbor Master. I think it's scheduled for sometime next week. I think the plan, as I understand it from the mayor and from David, is that the Harbor Master will coordinate the use of the dock, but what we're trying to do is to get all those special event kinds of visits, visits from tall ships, things like that, on the calendar. I'm working on an amendment to the special events calendar for an annual uprigging of the tall ships. I'm also working with Alice Estrada to try to figure out how we can get the Wilma Lee down there on a regular basis. And for the topic, and I apologize for being late. I was watching all the breaking news and I couldn't tear myself away. But I am trying to find money, and I did talk with the city manager about that this afternoon, to buy back the 2 grants. Certainly the initial $500,000 grant from Wildlife and Fisheries, which encumbers the docks in many significant ways, mostly that you can't have permanent kinds of activities there. It all has to be transient. And the 500,000 is going to be a fairly tough lift. I'm actually working with private organizations to see if we can have a public-private fundraising effort to raise that. Getting the other $1.5 million will be even tougher, but it is something that the mayor and I have coalesced on. We agree very much that it's desirable for the city to have control of its own docks and full control of the use of the docks. I think that everyone agrees that there needs to be a central focus for managing who and what and when goes on at the docks. But in my view, and working with Alice and Wendy and Lee, I think there's more than enough to go around. There's more than enough valuable things to do to celebrate the docks. And I've asked the mayor to call a meeting of all of the principals, including the commercial interests like you, Debbie, but also woodwinds and things like that, so we can have a grand meeting of the minds. And I think that's forthcoming sometime in the next month or so. Some things are more near term. The 4th of July celebration with tall ships is obviously near term. The uprigging is something that would be next year at the earliest, but is very much on the mayor's mind, and I fully support him on that. So it's really a matter of sitting down, sorting out who does what and when, and who are all of the competing interests. As you know, the special events legislation was written in an attempt to not have a flood of activities during high season when there's already more than enough visitors coming down to city docks. So we try to schedule things in the off season. We try to schedule things that don't close streets and don't close parking. So all of that will have to be part of the global consideration, but it is on the mayor's agenda and it's certainly on mine. I think anything we can do to celebrate our maritime heritage, particularly with tall ships, is something we ought to do. And we just need to get it all regularized and sorted out.
So Ross, let me ask you, because you mentioned something that came to mind with in conjunction with something Beth said earlier. In terms of the $500,000 buyback, and I'll call it that for lack of a better description, Beth mentioned that her projections for revenue were something around $70,000 if we could have a coordinated non-profit use and for-profit use of in particular the Berta stock. is there any thought given to, in terms of the buyback, to see if we can buy it back by way of I'm going to call it a promissory note. In other words, we could buy it back now with a promise to pay over, 5 years or whatever. But if we've got the income, which is essentially going to be found income off of the Burtis dock, it seems to me that that could be put towards buying back some of the other encumbrances, and that just becomes kind of a snowball effect of, the more you get, more encumbrances go away, the more I'll call it found money you may come up with to keep buying it back.
Yeah, so I think there's no specific settled on. I think open to all ideas. We're working with both Senator Cardin and Holland to make sure we don't want to step on any federal toes, first and foremost. I have a former professional colleague who is an alum of wildlife and fisheries. We want to make sure that what we're doing is going to be okay with them. The grant was, in my view, particularly pernicious because while the grant was for a specific time, it encumbered the city docks in perpetuity. And so I think we may need to have some help at the federal level to disencumber that. Those are all things that are in the works with Chris Lynch and others. It's not, as everything in Annapolis, it's not straightforward.
Right.
It's not going to be easy. But and I would say also that the city manager is very much in sync with this. He's the one that pointed out to me when he first came here from San Diego that he never saw a waterside city that had so few amenities for just casual people walking up to get out on the water. Now, if I were harbor master, I'd be cringing at that a little bit. We don't necessarily need to have a lot of paddle boards and kayaks on the water for nighttime race finishes. So you can tell that this is complicated and there's going to have to be a lot of coordination and good thought given to it. But the main thing is that for me and for the mayor and city manager, and I hope colleagues on the council, we want to get back control of our own docks. We don't want somebody else telling us when and how we can use them. If we can do that, then the scheduling and the management and the revenues and all of those things can be worked out amongst all of the various contending parties. I hope in a fairly agreeable and commodious way. We just have to pull all the parties together and have that dialogue.
So
So,
in that regard, excuse me, Beth, but in that regard, Ross, I mean, we heard earlier, I think before you came on, from Alderwoman Tierney, basically the concept that bookings would be through actually Parks and Recs, but through the harbor master, who would hold the, as I referred to it, as hold the bookings, much like the 800. She'd be the 800 number of the Holiday Inn and book the rooms with coordination of, and I hesitate to use the word priority because that has a different connotation, but with certainly with consideration given to, as you mentioned, Wilma Lee and the other visiting ships through Annapolis waterfront sailing, and at the same time that any programs that those ships would have would be run by either the Maritime Museum with Wilma Lee and some of the others. The programs themselves would be sort of run by the sailing group. Am I hearing that you're in agreement with that also?
Yes, so directly from the city manager and he from the mayor, tall ships are a priority, but they have to be integrated into a full program of use. We can't have them just showing up capriciously. They need to be planned ahead. And so what David said is we'll need to get all of the parties to come up with specific times for visits, and that'll all have to be integrated in with other demands I mean, it's very valuable and important space. So you can't just sort of let it happen on an ad hoc basis. And so one of the primary reasons for getting all the players, Wendy O'Sullivan too, all of the players together at one time is to sort this out. And one of the things we'll be asking the Annapolis Waterfront Sailing Center is to submit in advance their sailing program for the tall ships and all of the other, I mean, the Waterfront Center does a lot of other things besides tall ships, all of the programs that serve the youth and introduce people to sailing in the community. Same thing with the Annapolis Maritime Museum. They also are charged with helping to protect and enhance our maritime heritage. They have their own programs. We have a lot of people, Box of Rain. There's a lot of people that are doing a lot of different things. One of the things that I think we're starting to feel a need, particularly, remember, we don't have control of that long dock yet. And it's hard to know. I mean, it could be months still before that all gets resolved. But what we want to do is to get a collective coordination. Hopefully everybody will get a lot of the things that they want, but they're not going to get everything because there's competing demands, and that has to be sorted out. It is something that the mayor has taken a special interest in, has charged the city manager to coordinate. And I think sometime within the next month, there will be a grand meeting of all of the different persons and parties with interest, and we'll sort it out. And I see Hope on the line. We're also talking about that same breath, talking about how we're going to coordinate with all of the maritime interests, like the kinds of things that are coming out of the Maritime Task Force. So the mayor is taking a very global look at maritime across the board, but certainly is taking a very specific interest in what we can do to enhance and embellish the use of the city dock area, to bring as many different contributors to the whole maritime venue.
Debbie,
Ross, how does the financial part of that work? Will the Maritime Museum and the Annapolis Waterfront Sailing Center be paid for providing these programs by the city?
Well, the Maritime Museum is bringing in the tall ships for July, based on a grant that they received from Parks for activities from last year that they couldn't do because of COVID.
Could you repeat that, Ross? Because that's news to me. I've never heard this.
Well, that's my information is that, and that's directly from Alice Estrada, that to bring in, I think they're targeting 5 tall ships.
You said, can you say, what did you say? You said in July, I'm sorry, in July?
Yeah, 4th of July weekend.
Okay.
It's amazing.
I've never heard this.
I'm not surprised because I hadn't heard it either. Neither did the Annapolis Waterfront Sailing Center, but this is something that has been worked out with the mayor and with the Maritime Museum, using money that was a grant from the National Parks, Wendy O'Sullivan, and it was actually money to be expended last year in fiscal 20 and couldn't be because of COVID. So now it's being repurposed to bring in these ships. It is amazing how one hand doesn't talk to the other. And I apologize, Beth, if that's a surprise for you, but it was a big surprise for me just 2 weeks ago.
so
And
Ross, is this grant money so they can charter space at the dock and the city gets revenue from this, or is the city going to provide this dock for free and Maritime Museum pocket the grant?
it is money that the Maritime Museum is using. All of these tall ships have their own programs in their own communities, and they have a fully set out agenda. And for them to pick up and come to Annapolis is not without cost to them. And Beth, I haven't had a chance to look at it, but I understand you just issued new guidance about whether they can charge fees to give people rides. The mayor has the notion that people will be on these boats to watch the fireworks. Again, I'm embarrassed that I'm letting the cat out of the bag, but
Ross,
again, it
the
was
issue
news to
is,
me.
I mean, what, do you ever think about going to the maritime businesses that are already in business here, which also do programming and which will also be out there doing fireworks cruises and paying for the privilege of doing that to whoever their landlord is, and also paying 10% admission and amusement tax?
So, Debbie, I totally understand what you're saying. And again, since this is a recent surprise for many of us, we're trying to catch up. But this is the information I've been given from Alice Estrada, from Susie Smith, from well, Brian Callahan didn't really know about this until I asked him about it. So I guess this is something that is perking up, I guess. Organically, but this is a firmly established set of plans in the minds of the mayor's office, and they're proceeding, and they are the ones that solicited Alice Estrada to get involved in this through Wendy, and Wendy approving the repurposing of grant monies. In terms of all of the particulars, I'm struggling to get caught up just like you clearly are. And I don't have all the particulars. And that's why I urge, and I'm going to be sending an email this week to the mayor from Jim Muldoon from the Annapolis Waterfront Sailing, asking the same questions you're asking, Debbie. And there are a lot of players. I think that my sense is there's more than enough goodies to go around, but it has to be coordinated and integrated. And that hasn't been done.
That brings us back to the original question is, shouldn't and I don't know whether shouldn't the council or at least this board make a recommendation that coordination and bookings of the city dock ought to be handled through one entity, one agency, one whether it's the harbor master, Archie Trader, whoever it is, that because I can see right now that Annapolis Waterfront Center is also booked somebody to come in 4th of July.
So
And
what I would say to that, is
Beth would love to bring in a small ship, is not a tall ship, but a small ship that'll pay $10,000 to dock there for 4th of July. So it seems to me that the least this board can do is make a recommendation that management of the Burtis dock, at least in the short term, be handled by the office of Parks and Recs or the harbor master under Parks and Recs, with deference given to bookings to local organizations, but that the overall coordination and management of bookings has to be in a centralized place.
So I think that's, and I know Jennifer's trying to get in, but just to further information that I have, I think that is exactly my goal, that we have this coordinated, but we don't have control of the Burtis dock yet. And so the city attorney has opined that we will do business as usual. So the Lynx is coming soon, and it's going to be coming under the right of entry for the Annapolis Waterfront Sailing Center. And the city attorney has said, let's wait until we get control of that particular property, and then we will sit down and determine what the rules are. But the rules, again, I'll just reiterate quickly that David Gerald just 3 hours ago set forth to me, is that there will be one central coordination of all of the dock areas, including that, if we get that control of that, and that will be through the harbor master. But all of the different interests will be able to, in advance, put in plans for their particular things. And that has to do with future visits of tall ships. It has to do with how we accommodate the Wilma Lee and all of the other interests. So this is hot off the press at 4:15 from the city manager.
Ashley, since you're on the line, and that segues very quickly to what is the update, if any, on the status of the transfer?
Okay, so MHT got back to us and they want a slight revision to the survey that we had done. So that is in the works because they want to define one of the boundary lines differently. The DNR easement is pretty much finalized, but won't be signed till everything else is ready to go. The deed is about, I would say, is almost done. I'm waiting for final approval from DGS's attorney on it. And then, so the last piece we're working on is I haven't really received any feedback from, besides the survey from MHT on its easement or all the items it required us to submit. So that's the piece we're kind of waiting on for the most part.
What does that translate into days or months?
Months.
I mean, I don't know. I know the DNR easement is definitely done. The deed, we're waiting on the survey update and the okay from the attorney. So that could be another month. MHT, I don't know. I mean, it honestly depends on whether they're okay with the comments we proposed to the easement or not. And also whether they've approved for the most part of the surveys but they haven't approved of the title reports yet or the title searches. So they're still reviewing all of that sort of information. If all of that comes back with no big issues, it could move quickly. If it comes back with a lot of issues and we need revisions, it will slow it down. And I don't really know at this point.
So it
I'm
could be June
hopeful.
1st, or it could be like September 1st.
Yeah, I mean, we are still progressing, and so far everything is going really well. We haven't hit any serious speed bumps at this point. But you never know, because the MHT easement is probably, the historical easement is probably the most complicated one to finagle out.
So if what I am hearing from Ross's, Alderman Arnett's representation of the city attorney's office and your comments is that the city effectively cannot, even though the mayor seems to be proceeding this way, but technically, legally, it is not the city's dock to do anything with at this point.
It is not. The state has already said that we're signing all of the documents together so that they all have to be, the MHT easement, the DNR easement, and the deed, and all related paperwork has to be done, and we will sign and close all at the same time. They're not willing to do it piecemeal, so that means we have to wait for all of the pieces to be in place.
And but in the meantime, it sounds as though DNR has sort of the state has defaulted to the city to go ahead with management in the interim. By default.
I'm not really sure. For me personally, I haven't heard anything about what DNR is doing. They may have talked directly to the administration, but I haven't been involved in that piece. So I'm not really sure how DNR is defaulting at the moment.
So what I've been told is it's not ours to manage, but in case it gets transferred in the middle of a month so that the programs can move seamlessly, I should book it on my software, even though it's not mine to book. That's what I've been told.
That sounds right to me, Beth. And I think that the email I got last week from Mr. Lyles was that until we actually take possession, we'll more or less, like for the visit of the links, we will more or less do business as has been done in the past. Once we get the absolute control of it, we'll determine what the rules are from there.
So, Alderman Tierney, you opened this Pandora's box.
Well, I did. I'm just a simple person and I just don't understand why the hub of the wheel isn't our harbor master, but maybe it's just far more complicated than that. And And I was just sort of, what is status quo? Lee Tani tells me that he has right of entry. Is that indefinitely? And what exactly does that mean?
I know the original document expired in December. I've heard that they've unofficially extended it through till when the actual closing transfer would take place, but I've never seen anything to document that.
That's what I've heard also, Ashley.
So Ross, to Alice Estrada's point, about if the Annapolis Waterfront Center has the right of entry, the control until closing, and closing doesn't occur until after July 4th, and they decide to bring somebody in, it seems to me that the Maritime Museum and their tall ships are out of luck.
Well, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the Lynx visit impending? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. It's scheduled and to come to the long dock, and the sailing center is, willing to work. The only thing that the state, well, not the only thing, but one of the things the state has in the right of entry is that the long dock cannot be used for pay for hire, so to speak. And that's a problem with the Wilma Lee, because they take people out for hire, and it doesn't work by the words that are in the right of entry with the state. Once the city gets it, then the city can make its own policy.
Right.
But that's the only holdback. So the Lynx isn't charged. It's all nonprofit type stuff. But Wilma Lee charges. So the Wilma Lee, could work with the sailing center, but they just couldn't charge as they are advertising to do through their website and stuff.
The Lynx, sorry, the Lynx didn't charge, but
I'm
was
sorry,
the Lynx
I'm saying Wilma.
paid to come? Just
No, they're
curious.
they're not paid to come, and they're given a dock. And they have programs, help to run programs through whatever, whether it's the schools or Hispanic office or Archie's groups, pop-up camps, whatever. I don't know the exact programs that are scheduled on particular days.
Jen's had her hand up
Yeah,
for a
so
while.
a little information about the Lynx. So we'll start with them. I've had the captain actually call me and plead with me to let a charter go on that boat to do for pay. So they want to do for pay. They don't want to just come in and be free. That's the first thing about Lynx. Second thing about 4th of July, what the mayor, that from what I am understanding, has tasked the Annapolis Maritime Museum is to make a big deal with tall ships at City Dock. So the thing is like all my friends, because I'm on this, me and Duncan sit on the Great Chesapeake Bay Schooner Race board. They're all calling me like, I've just got invited to come up to Annapolis to spend 4th of July. And I said, so great. And how's that working? He's like, they know nothing about it. They know nothing of how to run an event. They don't know that you pay appearance fees. Schooner Virginia's appearance fee is $13,000. So this city is going to pay $13,000 to have somebody sit at City Dock.
For the grant money, what about the grant?
So
That
that's what
Ross
probably
alluded to,
you're
the
getting.
$60,000. Does that pay that? Or?
That's what I'm thinking for them to. So I don't know how all the grant money works, but I just think that might be a foolish way to pay for, having a boat come in when Beth Bellas could make so much money off of 4th of July dockage on those docks and et cetera. Anyway, it's just interesting that, here Duncan and I both work on the schooner race board, and, we're both have all these schooner and tall ship, friends, and we could easily chat with them about coming in and making a spectacular event, but they haven't gone to us.
Probably better to ask Ross that, but it's really up to the mayor, because he invented this and with no follow-up planning.
Exactly.
Ask the mayor directly. That's what Jim Muldoon wrote the letter to Ross, and Ross is going
Right.
to hopefully find some answers. And that's a great question that you've got. Jen.
So
It's like-
Ross, if that's, if there's this meeting, I think you said bringing in all the stakeholders, I assume then Debbie, Jen, the harbor master, all going to be in that meeting. And at least that's the form. I don't see where at this point, this board can do, and I'll get to you in a minute, Mike, where we would necessarily take make a recommendation for something we don't own.
Exactly.
But I think we might follow up on that next month. Mike, what did you want to say?
Well, I just, in the interest of simmering this down and figuring out what exactly is entailed, I think the way I understand it is that Lee and the Waterfront Sailing Center are maintaining control of the long dock because the city does not yet control it. And then they're going to handle scheduling for the things that they want for programs, including inviting tall ships through the Maritime Museum's grant. But then Beth is going to have the availability to schedule what's left on that dock if there are no other programs. So
Got it.
if
I think that's the
basics
ideal.
are that we need to figure all that out, then we're also going to need to include a time frame for when Beth gets access to what days and how she can use them, right? Because if she's just finding out now about dock usage that's happening over July 4th, she can't start scheduling for July 4th until she knows that those dates are open. Right. So
And to be honest, I'm going to do my very best, but I'm not super optimistic. There were two things that Ross said that I'd like to talk about very quickly. One thing that Alderman Arnett said was Annapolis Waterfront and Sailing Center, that they'll be booking, and maybe that didn't really mean anything. Maybe that was a very abstract comment. But what has to happen is the captains absolutely have to book with me, because I don't know how long their boats are. I don't know when they're staying. And in the past 5 years, this has never worked whatsoever. Boats have been booked for the entire commissioning week, more than 300 linear feet, and they never showed up, and we turned away boats the entire week. So the captains have to book directly with me, and I am really hoping the city will support that. And then the other thing that Alderman Arnett mentioned was the lack of casual use, and I'm not sure. I just wanted to ask what you meant by that, because I'm not sure what you meant.
So there have been several approaches over the years, well before you were here, for things like the electric boats to have a berth on city dock, for charter fishing boats to have a berth on city dock. That would not be a 9-day berth. It would be a permanent berth. The fishing charters could be a shared berth amongst various players, but it was so that people that just happen to come down to the dock, say a family, and half of them decide to enjoy shopping on Main Street, and half of them want to go out for 3 hours for a charter. That can't happen right now, and certainly can't happen under the Wildlife and Fisheries Grant. And I think there is a desire to allow that to happen to a limited extent, and it'll be competitive. And we're going to have to figure out how we share that around. All of these things, and Beth, I really do apologize, and I hope you don't get me in trouble with the mayor, but I assume this was common knowledge. I also assume that the email that I can go back and look at who the addressees are from Mr. Lyle, but it was an advisory, the city attorney Lyle, it was an advisory on how do we handle the visit from the links, and it was, we'll handle it like we've done in the past until we get possession, and then we'll have new rules.
Now, the length isn't any surprise to me. The 4th of July is a surprise to me, and the casual use you're speaking of is a vision that I think we all share. I think it's a great idea to be able, but I don't know if the vision is a lease or a shared lease or a charter dock. So all that has to be hammered out, but I think everybody would like to see more varied users that are not encumbered by a grant. I think we can all agree on that.
No, I do agree. And I also agree, though, with you that it has to be managed. And I think the only logical way you can do it is through a central source. So again, I'm just telling you and it wasn't a planned conversation. It was just part of a longer conversation with the city manager, that what we want to do is to find accommodations for all parties. They have to plan in advance. That's why I talk about it in coordination with the special events. If we do an annual uprigging here, like the downrigging in Chestertown, that has to be planned. It has to be date certain, and it has to have all of the different nuances, which you know better than I, sorted out, where it's going to be and all of those things. But it is a desire that I share with the mayor that we get tall ships in here to visit on a pretty regular basis. It's all part of the nautical maritime history and culture of downtown city docks. Admittedly, tall ships go back, 100 years and more, but it's part of that whole notion that the mayor has, which again I share, of really making the city dock a very exciting place to come and visit. You'll never know what's going to be there on any particular weekend if you're a casual visitor, but it may encourage you to come back and visit more frequently. And while you're doing that, shop in Annapolis, dine in Annapolis, go see others of the many different things that Annapolis has to offer. So it's all part of our economic scheme that the mayor wants to definitely embellish.
I mean, of course, I think that these ships help preserve, without being too cliche, sort of the face of Maryland. And I definitely understand how important they are, but I will caution everyone to understand that even if these ships are coming at a no fee, they're coming on no fee because they're nonprofit, they're educational, or they're offering a program to, underprivileged groups. We have to find a way to have some skin in the game for them. And so what we've learned is, if you don't cancel and you don't show up, because if you don't cancel and you don't show up, there has to be some penalty, because otherwise groups are monopolizing and we have empty docks and no revenue. So it's okay for me, in my mind, if they're free, but they need to have some skin in the game somehow, some way.
I don't, it's premature because David and I were having a conversation on the fly, but we did talk specifically about the tall ships paying. We talked about a scheme where they may come on a grant, so they pay a fee, but we give them a grant, or we help them find a grant to pay for that fee. I don't think any of that is settled, Beth, and I think it's probably premature to talk about that because
Sure, maybe.
you don't have control of that. But I know that David is a pretty sound city manager and businessman. He understands that. Gavin, I think, tends to be more on the excitement side of things and let you figure out the details, or someone else figure out the details. It's part of the charm of the mayor, but it does leave some things that need to be caught up in a hurry. And I totally understand that.
I'd like to bring this to some conclusion. Scott, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, just a real quick one. I agree with Beth that if these tall ships, maybe, are coming to provide a service to the city through whatever program, and they don't show, they're not fulfilling their obligation to the city, and they're out of, I'm just thinking out loud, they ought to pay a deposit for the right to get a free dock and provide services. And if they don't, they lose their deposit. And if they do, the deposit goes back when they leave. They provide their service, and the tit for tat is a free dock providing service. But I agree with Beth that if you have a ship coming for a program, you're going to give them free dock, and they don't show, the city doesn't get the service and loses the opportunity to rent, whatever, during that time. So I think that might be a good thing to put in the policy when it comes along. First, you have to get the docks unencumbered to do these kind of things.
Alderman Tierney.
Yeah, I just want to say, and that I think that that this is a big resource. And I think in the spirit of transparency, I was looking at the board as a fair, a fair place to discuss. And I think those discussions should continue, again, in the interest of transparency, because what we're hearing from Ross is that there's a lot of wheels spinning, and I think it's in the maritime interest that we get a handle on what's going on here, and also, I believe, to support our harbor master office. So I think that at least tonight secures that objective, at least this discussion, and I think it should continue.
Well, I certainly will leave this on the agenda. And Ross, I'll ask you, would it make sense that I attend that meeting also? I don't know
Absolutely. That
when it's
was,
going to be, and my schedule is not my own, but and if I can't, maybe have someone from the board attend.
that was certainly my sense. I've talked with the mayor about this twice, and I've talked with David about it twice, and I've talked with Susie since I wanted her to sort of prod from within the inner sanctum, that this is something that needs to be addressed now, even more so because of the discovery of the 4th of July event, which is much bigger than the tall ships. And it's basically the mayor's announcing that Annapolis is open for business again, picking up on the Biden theme that we'll be having enough people inoculated that 4th of July can mark the moving back towards normal. I don't know that we'll ever get to normal. So it's part of a bigger thing. And I think because it is part of a bigger thing, Gavin's looking at the big picture and forgets that some people have to pick up the pieces and coordinate underneath that big picture. And that'll fall in line. But I think this is much longer term than just the 4th of July. I think this is, how do we manage this resource? How do we share it? How do we, and I think this dialogue about ships making a commitment and not showing, and how do we handle that? All of those things need to be sorted out. I only became aware of the sort of the whole program that these tall ships have in their home ports. And so they're kind of loath to leave that with no compensation, because they leave behind their own forms of compensation in their home ports. I do think we want to have them here. I don't think we need to have them a steady diet of them, but I think it would be nice if we can have a flow of them during the year, and particularly have this uprigging event, which is very much on the mayor's mind. Brian Callahan is honchoing that, and I will be doing legislation in terms of the special events. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of loose ends, but definitely, Terry, you or someone or some people from the MAB were always, my thought, need to be part of this big meeting whenever we can.
Just let us know. I'll do two things. One, I'll keep this on the agenda. I will invite you and Alderwoman Tierney back next month, also, if you're available. And thirdly, if you will just let me know when the meeting is, either I or I will solicit someone from who will be available from the board to come and sit and listen and opine as may be appropriate.
Right. If they let me know when it is, I will let you know.
All right. Thank you all. Unless there's something else, I think I would turn to our other guest, Donna Morrow, so that she can go get dinner or whatever, since it's now 8 o'clock. So Donna, you want to give us an update on, I think it was on the NDZ, no discharge zone?
Yeah, that's correct. Hi, good evening, everybody. I don't have a whole lot to tell you, but I just would rather have it come directly from me to you so that everybody gets the same information. As you know, we had tentative approval from EPA that was published last fall in the Federal Register, which is how this goes, because we are going through a Federal Clean Water Act change. And I had expected that the final determination, favorable determination, would have been done by the end of the year. But unfortunately, that did not happen. And in the interim, we've had an election and a change of administration. So I keep checking back with the folks at EPA, and it's just been taking much longer than I thought. Apparently, last email I had with him was April 2nd. He did say at that time that the NGZ is in its final phase of the process, which is a good thing. And he would get back to me as soon as there was an actual update on that. So it's been a few, another couple of weeks go by and I haven't heard anything more. Once we do get the final approval from EPA, assuming that we do, then, as you probably are aware, all that does is give the Coast Guard the authority to enforce that. We do not have any state level enforcement until we update our state regulations as well. So it's a two-part process. And we will be working in conjunction with Coast Guard and others to write the state regulations and have them go through the Maryland Register, another public comment, and so forth. So that likely will take an additional, I would guess, 90 days or more to grind through our system, because we are still in full telework mode. Nothing is moving as quick as it normally would. So that's kind of where we are with that. There's a chance we'll have a final approved no discharge zone this summer, but I couldn't say exactly when.
Donna, can I ask a question?
Mhm.
Oh, over what territory? What is it? Countywide? Is it what region?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you guys would have known that.
Well, I
It's
should have known.
all the waters of Anne Arundel County. Yeah, that are not, right now, Herring Bay is already one. And it would not include like the very northern portion that borders Baltimore City, or Baltimore County, but everything else was in there.
So one other question. So let's assume it is finalized as of July 1, just for sake of argument. Is the effective date the day it's finalized, or is there an effective date? Is there a phase in for vessels to have to be able to convert over to compliance? How does that going to work?
It will generally be effective the day it takes effect. When the federal portion is done, then the Coast Guard has the authority to enforce that. And once the state portion is done, then I would consider that fully final and in full effect. And our regulations do intend, as I know some of you may be aware, to do what we're going to call sort of a phased in compliance for any vessel that needs time to retrofit a vessel, a commercial, passenger vessel that may need to retrofit, because that doesn't happen on a dime. So every recreational boat will certainly be held to that as of day one, once the state and federal are in place.
Donna, Bill Woodward here. You mentioned that the Baltimore area or Northern County is not included in that. What is the rationale and reasoning for that?
Well, this was done by Anne Arundel County and Annapolis, so their jurisdiction ends at, I want to say, Rock Creek, I think. And we didn't.
So it is countywide then? It is countywide?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, that's fine.
Anybody else? Scott?
Will there be in the administration of it, getting a sticker like we have for registration for boats, so that boats don't have to get boarded all the time? Could you go get a pre-inspection or something and get a certificate so that you can have a sticker on your boat?
We
Seems easier.
do
to
have something like
administrate.
that right now. Anyway, the Natural Resources Police will do a courtesy inspection, and they do, as part of that, the head and bilge. They check for environmental issues like that. And the boaters can request that. I don't expect there'll be more boardings as a result of this or anything. It's not really a big enforcement wish, I will say, because there's no way to know if somebody's violating this really, unless there's firsthand account. Somebody sees something floating that shouldn't be floating. And I can tell you that, it's already illegal to discharge raw sewage, and in the 23 years I've been at DNR, it's very nearly impossible to get an NRP boat to come out and wait for somebody to flush, even if you think they're doing it, right? So enforcement isn't really going to be a big part of it. I will say that the regs will probably suggest that, you know, everybody involved in this, from Severn River Association and Back Creek Conservancy and all of the above, have all stressed that they wanted this to be an education first situation. There's no plans to, you know, really come down hard on people, but just use it more as an education effort.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else? We let Donna be the lucky one to flee second. Donna, thank
Please
you
let me
very
know.
much. Thank you very much for that update. And I know you stay in touch with Debbie. If you just let her know when there's something else, you know, something pops up, and we can certainly slot you in, or she can report either way.
Okay, very good. And I will certainly keep in touch with Jackie Guild in the mayor's office as well, just so that they're aware. And Beth, of course.
Right. All right.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you.
Sure. Take care.
Let me go to one other thing, since we had Ashley here, and maybe we can, once we get past this one, might be able to let her go. Ashley, we've already talked about the Burtis House. Can you give us any update on Wells Cove and the litigation that's pending on Wells Cove about the water access, et cetera? I don't see her light going off or coming on.
I can start.
Okay.
I'm hoping Ashley will jump in because she's much better at these things than I am. I think that, is it Blue Heron? I think the
Yeah.
condominium association is represented by Ed, Debbie's brother.
Okay.
I can't remember the particulars of how he expresses his first name, but so I read a letter that sounds like none of those rights are going to come easily to the city, and probably I don't think that Boucher Avenue, if that's what we're talking about, the Wells Cove area.
Right.
I think that's going to, it seems to me as a layperson, that's going to remain under the control of the condominium association based on the legal letter that I read. But I don't think that our legal department has reacted to that letter. So it's sort of up in the air at the moment.
Right.
So there's actually 3 prongs that are being pursued. We're still pursuing easements with Gary Parham. We're also asking to add the city right-of-way to the deed, the Blue Heron deed. I think that will probably escalate from an ask to something stronger than that. We're considering putting in the capital improvement budget monies to extend a dock over the stormwater catchment basin and out to the navigable waters. That is going to be coming up in discussions with the finance committee. We're doing the budget right now. We'll get to the capital improvement program next week. Again, this is something that I'm working very closely with the mayor, and the mayor has told all staff that we will preserve that water access there. We do have the writ of mandamus. There's a motion by the city to dismiss that, but that hasn't been addressed by the circuit court as far as I know. So it is still very active. I was told that the Office of Law is pursuing that. We will pursue that the city has a right of way is a given. I mean, it's been there. It was there, predates Blue Heron condominiums, that the city legislated in code that to be a water access over the city's right of way is without dispute. The real question is, do we have to get this on the deed before we start building the dock, or what? I mean, it's who's going to be proactive, and then who's going to sue whom after proactive actions. But my latest information as of last week is that the Office of Law is still aggressively pursuing both easements. The right of way, it does exist, and I think will have to be reflected on a deed, whether people want it or not. What we do from there is, still to be determined.
All right, thank you. With that, if Ashley is listening, I think that was the last thing that maybe Ashley would have effect on. So let's jump, if I can, jump back up to the regular order of business, which with the first item would be the approval of the minutes, which I circulated to everybody. So the first thing is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Hood, Mr. Thomasini moved, Mr. Hood seconded, Tammy. Any discussion, comments, or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, we'll call a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
For those, Tammy, you could see everyone, it was unanimous. I'll leave it to you to sort out who was here last month that could really vote. All right, that takes care of that. Mr. Frankie, any update from the county MIAB? You're on mute.
Muted.
You're still on mute.
Sorry about that.
There you
No
go.
report because I missed the meeting. I was traveling. Donna was on the agenda, so I'm pretty sure the report she gave us would be a duplicate if I had a report from this county.
All right, Hope, I will take you with as on behalf of Stephen, if you have any economic development update.
Just a reminder, this might be relevant for some maritime businesses, but not all of them. Anne Arundel Workforce Development Corporation still has their Impacted Worker Support Fund open, and it's for any employees that were impacted by COVID, either were laid off or had lost wages in some way. And it's a $500 Visa gift card. So they can apply on the Anne Arundel Workforce Development Corporation's website. So just wanted to put that reminder out there.
Thank you. I had a request from Marcus Woolley, and I was going to raise it with Stephen. He's been trying to get a hold of Stephen, but he cannot do so. Would you just pass on to Stephen that he needs to get a hold of Marcus?
I will. Actually, Steve had a nice conversation with Mr. Woolley this afternoon.
Ah, very good. And I'm going to put everybody on hold for just me on mute. I apologize. My son, who is 7 degrees south latitude below the equator, halfway between Brazil and Africa, called me.
Oh, man, you got to take that.
Only when the ship happens to swing in the right direction does he get a phone able to make a phone call. So I just put him on to call his mother.
Good for you.
So that was one I had to take. All right. So yes, thank you for letting me know that he did touch base with him this afternoon, because Marcus had asked me if I'd just raise that and ask him to try to get in touch with each other. Duncan, comprehensive plan, anything we need to know from the
Yeah.
comprehensive plan from you or from Hope?
I am getting nothing. It may be that I've been cut out of that loop. I'll push hard on that and try and get a hold of somebody to figure it out. Hope, do you have any way that you can hook me in again?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I can put you in touch with Sally Nash.
That'd be great. I think for some reason I may have been dropped from her list. Thank you.
All right, next one is mine, and that's the Maritime Task Force update. There have been a number of, I should say a number, there have been several briefings to the Planning Commission, Eastport Civic Association, and others by Eileen Fogarty and other members of, I think, either staff or on the committee. As I understand it, and I am not a chair, so I don't sit on any, I don't get any of the chair, vice co-chair updates. Debbie or one of the others of you that are on it, Mike Tomasini, may have a little more update. I know the goal is to have something able to be presented to council or filed by way of legislation sooner rather than later, given the time constraints in an election year, and probably not a whole loaf, but something more than a half a loaf. And I will ask Mike Mike Tomasini, if you have anything you want to add or not.
Sure. I've been in several meetings this month, probably since March 15th. I've been in several meetings, co-chair meetings, industry groups, Eastport Civic Association, Planning Commission. The most recent meeting with the Planning Commission went well. There was a lot of really good feedback on what we had discussed so far. A lot of what my committee, my subcommittee is working on are the logistics behind potential incentives for water access. And some of the concerns raised from the community are just how tightly we can word the language so that it doesn't get taken advantage of. For, just as an example, if somebody gets an incentive, say 5% flexibility for providing funds to the city for street end park, or potentially putting in a community boating center or something like that, then how do we make sure that their feet are held to the fire to make sure that it really goes to where it's supposed to go? And that was a lot of the questioning from the Planning Commission was, exactly how do you word it so that the community gets out of it what they're supposed to be getting out of it. But I feel like it's going pretty well. I feel like there's been a lot of consensus from the industry, the property owners, and for a pretty good percentage of the residents, and about exactly where the flexibility is needed, and how we implement that. It's the last stretch that I think is going to be the most difficult to navigate, and I think we're in a pretty good place right now.
All right, Debbie, any additional input from you?
No, I just really what Mike said. I think that there's not a lot of appetite for much change in the Eastport Peninsula. There might be some appetite for change on the Annapolis Landing Marina and Port Annapolis side of the creek a little bit, but I think it's going to be hard to make any wholesale changes. Would you agree, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like some of the flexibility is being more well received than others. I don't think that there's a lot of appetite for restaurants over here in Eastport as much as there is maybe from the residential community that surrounds WMI. On the flexibility side, I think there are some details to be worked out, but I think that most people are in it, and most of the people that I've been on the committees with have been in it for the right reasons, which is making sure that we adapt from what was 1985 to what is now post 2020. When we talk about the maritime industry, it's not exactly the same as it used to be, and the property owners can't be stuck to that, those kinds of constraints.
All right, anybody else have questions or input on that? We are,
I have one more thing, Terry. In one of my committee meetings, it was brought up that the city as a whole should be doing a better job of attracting new and potentially, successful maritime operators. And this board was brought up as a potential outreach organization for those recruiting efforts because we're all in the industry. And as such, the members of this board might be the ones who have the best information when reaching out to companies who are not located here about how great the city is to work with and what things the city's done to preserve maritime businesses and how we can be a tool in that toolbox to lure potential businesses here.
certainly, to the extent that the city needs ambassadors to visit with, entertain, tout the city. I think you're absolutely right. There's a number of people on this board, most everybody on the board, that can talk passionately and persuasively about the benefits of the city. But I think also some of the things that have come out of it is, I mean, I'll go up to the 50 mile on the air area, not even 50,000 feet. The Amazons of the world, first thing they ask is, what are my incentives? What are my economic incentives to come to relocate and bring 500 jobs or 5,000 jobs or whatever to the community? And that's a reality that is, I think, here, and we need to, because we do have some restrictions in terms of some of the zoning, in terms of just acreage, land space. So I think the two go hand in hand. Is what can the city offer by way of, economic incentives, coupled with the ambassadorship or outreach of doing it, bringing somebody here, or the benefits of the city. So it's going to be a challenge, and some of that is what was talked about in one of the committee meetings I was in, and I think also perhaps in the large meeting about how do we create a fund to help do that.
And that's been bandied about quite a bit. And Bob Hammond is working pretty hard on just exactly where to find the money and how to make sure that it gets distributed in the right way.
So last but not least, I had mentioned some time back that there were a number of, Jake, that was cute. That there were a number of our appointments are expiring in July. And I don't have any, it's not for me to make new appointments or reappoint, but it is incumbent upon anybody whose appointment is expiring to certainly let Hillary know. And I would suggest you let the council members that are on the committee know that you wish to be reappointed, or that you are going to decline to, that you don't want to be reappointed, so they can be thinking about who might replace you. And to that point, I am saddened to say that Rick Frankie has told me that he does not going to seek reappointment. I have asked him, I encouraged him to reconsider, but I appreciate why he might not want to reconsider. He's been a longtime member, and we have appreciated his sage input from a variety of different perspectives. Rick,
Actually, Terry, at least the Army lets you out after 20 years.
Well, I look at this as you've only served, one term for each of the jobs you've held throughout the duration. You keep changing jobs, and therefore you keep coming in in a new role. So, but now that you're getting rid of jobs, I guess it goes hand in hand. But I appreciate all your participation and over the years, and we've still got a couple more meetings to go, 3 more meetings to go. So I look forward to seeing you again for the next 2 or 3 meetings.
Here, here. Thank you.
All right. With that said, does anybody have anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
All right, we have one motion to adjourn. We have Scott Allen has seconded it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Tammy, thank you very much. Beth, thank you for your input. Ashley, I'm going to, Eric's going to disconnect you. So wherever you are, you're going to get disconnected. All right, everybody have a good evening.